Hi, my name is Estela Flores, and this is my first blog. My first question was reconciliation was possible or not? I think it was not possible. If it were, they tried it before, but it did not work for them, because the Olive Branch petition vowed allegiance to the crown and claimed the colonies did not seek independence, and they merely wanted to negotiate trade and tax regulations with Great Britain. The petition asked for one or two alternatives. Alternatively, no tax and strict trade regulation. The King's proclamation declared the 13 colonies to be a state of revolt. He ordered British officers and loyal subjects to suppress the uprising. The hostility of King George III weakened the colonists' attachment to Great Britain and strengthened the movement for independence. Now I'm going to be talking about the American Revolution. First, the 7 Year War, which I have a picture. The 7 Year War. The conflict began in 1754 over contested land in Ohio Valley, variously claimed by Virginia and Pennsylvanians, the French, and the Indians already living there. The result was costly 7 years' war, which spread in 1756 to encompass much of Europe and Caribbean and even the Indian. The American colonists experienced nearly 10 years of warfare, not 7. It's what they call the French and Indian War. The first battle of what would become known as the First French and Indian War occurred early one May morning when the Mingo chief led a detachment of Washington soldiers to a small French encampment in the woods. To minimize violence, the British government issued a proclamation of 1763 forbidding colonists to settle west of the Appalachian Mountains. Here's a picture. The hardest duty to enforce was by Molasses Act of 1733. A stiffened tax of 6 pence per gallon of any molasses pursuit for non-British sources. Geneville's ingenious situation was still Revenue Act of 1764. Popularity doubled the Sugar Act. So in February 1765, he escalated his revenue program with the staff of participation, a major conflict between Britain and colonies over Parliament's right to tax. Stamp Act of 1756 was taxation on documents like newspaper and etc. The first organized resistance to the Stamp Act began in Boston in August 1765 under the direction of the town's leader Samuel Adams and John Hancock. The Boston town meetings led the way with non-consumption's agreement calling for a boycott of a British-made good. The Boston Massacre. And I believe this is one of the famous pictures that they use. The Boston Massacre. The climate came on Monday evening, March 5th, 1770, with a crowd taunted 8 British soldiers guarding the custom house. Onlookers threw snowballs and rocks and dared the soldiers to fire. Finally, one did. After a short pause, someone yelled, "Fire!" and the other soldiers shot into the crowd, hitting 11 men, killing 5 of them. The Tea Act of 1773. Americans had resumed fine to tax British tea, but they were also smuggling large quantity of Dutch tea, cutting into the sales of Britain East Indian Company, which is this one. During the winter of 1774 through 75, American pressed on with boycott. When soldiers got to Lexington Village, 5 miles east of Concord, they were met by 70 armed men. Assembled on the village green, the British failed to find the expected arms, and the Americans failed to stop there. As the British returned to Boston, a unit pushed them, bringing the bloodiest fight of the day. In the end, 273 British soldiers were wounded or dead. The toil for the Americans was at 95. It was April 19, 1775, and the war has begun. In July 1775, Congressional moderates led by John Dickinson engineered an appeal to King called the Olive Branch Petition. The petition affirmed loyalty to the monarchy and blamed all the troubles on the ministers and on Parliament. King George III rejected the Olive Branch Petition and commanded the Americans as traitors. Thereafter, it was hard to blame only ministers and not the king himself for the conflict. And that concludes my vlog about the American Revolution. Thank you.